Welcome to our third week of Mission U. We've had some grand 2 weeks together, and now our third week will just continue to add on to our knowledge of how to handle anxious world times that we are in. So before further ado, I just want to remind you a couple of other little Zoom tips. We know them every week, but today I'll just remind us to make sure we mute our Zoom when we are not talking. And if you have any kind of problem, please use your chat to either let us know what you're experiencing. We will be posting also Linda's number as well as our compassionate care person's number there. And so that's the two main things I would have you remember today. And so I think Belinda has a couple more reminders for you before we enter today's study.
Thank you, Kathryn. An attachment to the registrar's email to you for this Sunday, this past week, you got an email from the registrar, and there was a one-page handout that at the top was your Zoom bingo card for this week. We have different selections than from week one, the first session. So the idea is when you can mark out all those blocks on your bingo card, please put bingo in the chat box. And once we get a few people recognizing they have bingos, we'll put in the chat that the game is closed and we've had a lot of fun with it. But we thought we would just add this to our experience for this particular Mission U experience. So you have the bingo card. Also on that one-page handout at the bottom is a 5-pointed star, which we will talk about later in this session. We do have a compassionate listening service available, and we appreciate Denise Logan volunteering to coordinate this service. Please use her cell phone number that is on this screen or will be periodically put in the chat box later throughout the session. And if you call her, leave a message or text her and text a message, then she will contact you after this session is over. And that service is available to you. We do appreciate the fact that we all need some self-care during this study this afternoon. And so we do have a scheduled comfort break, but if you need to take an unscheduled break, by all means do so. We will welcome you back when you rejoin us. Self-care is important. And we have 3 points to our group covenant. 1, respect, please, each other's space when talking. Let individuals finish what they have to say without interruption. 2, keep all conversations in breakout rooms confidential. Ask permission to share outside the small group. And 3, be present in this gathering. Bring your full self. Leave your worries and anxiety behind you for now. And it is my great joy to introduce you again for our third session to our wonderful study leader, the Reverend Sue DeBree. We are so grateful that she is serving as our study leader for this important, timely, valuable study together. So welcome, Sue DeBree. We're so happy that you are our study leader.
Thanks so much, Belinda, and grace and peace to all of you. It's really a joy to be with you again this week. I've got the picture behind me is from the shores of Flathead Lake Camp. I had luck at Park a couple of weeks ago, and I just I'm so thankful to be in this part of the world where we have peaceful surroundings so much of the time, and places where we can go that are places of refuge. And Mission U has been one of those for me. So I'm really thrilled to always be part of it in whatever capacity I have an opportunity to be. This Mission U, we've been talking about building peace in an anxious world, but we're using the Beatitudes to build up to the building peace part. And the first week was focusing on ourselves. Last week is some ways to think about building peace within our families, new ways of communicating within our families. This week, we'll be talking about points of connection that we have in our community. And then week 4 is where we'll reach out beyond our communities into our state and world activities and ways that we might be part of building peace beyond ourselves. Trying to just use some of the new thinking about we talk to each other, how we communicate with each other, how we can maintain respect even when we have differences. So I'm excited about the content and what we're trying to do with it and the conversations that we're having. And I really appreciate you jumping into those with healthy ways to build community. And I'm thankful for all of you who are here have been here through all of the sessions. For those of you who might be just joining today, and especially greeting to those who catch up with us on the recordings later on, because I know there are quite a few folks that aren't able to make the Sunday afternoon time, but still are watching later on during the week. So our, oh, well, there's our body of Christ. I forgot that was going to be part of things this time. But that we as churches are called to be the body of Christ. This one came from the campus ministry in Bozeman, and just illustrates, how it takes so many different people together to continue the work of Christ in the world. And the better we learn to work with each other, the more we can effectively bring his love and his light into our world. We're using the Beatitudes as a basis foundationally, scripturally, for the work that we're doing this time. And they build on each other. Last week, we kind of left it at the hungering and thirsting for things to be set right, which is righteousness. And coming into that, we had to look at how our meekness, our sense of humility feeds into that. And today's Beatitudes, our attitudes of being, include the blessings of mercy and purity of heart. Now, mercy and justice, also called righteousness often in the Bible, are continually linked together. Justice without mercy turns cruel, and mercy without justice can allow injustice to continue. Biblical justice doesn't just mean punishment, it means setting things right. There are consequences for things that we do wrong, especially the ones we do deliberately. But righteousness, in the sense of the scriptures here, is setting things right, not just punishing, but mending and healing and restoration of balance through the work of grace, of mercy. So justice last week, mercy this week. Mercy and justice are twin themes that you'll find. You always have one with the other, almost always, in the scriptures. They're paired in the prayer of restoration in Psalm 85, verse 10, for example, where they're imaged as kissing one another. So it's a blessing to have these Beatitudes as kind of the steps towards love and peace that we're trying to seek in this world, to ways to embody that. And Lora Fulton's going to read the Beatitudes today from the version called The Message for us. And we're adding to the verses following the Beatitudes to just get the sense of carrying that light of Jesus into the world, and what his command is, that we're getting these Beatitudes so that we can carry the light.
Matthew
Lora?
5, Matthew 5, 1 through 6 from the Message, or 1 through 16 from the Message. When Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. This is what he said: "You are blessed when you are at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart, put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are uncomfortable. You can't be glad when that happens. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even, for though they don't like it, I do. And all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you here on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. Be opening up to others. You'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven.
Thank you, Laura. The word of God for all God's people. We are blessed when we show mercy, when we care, when our mind and our heart are open to recognize the pain around us, and we feel compassion. We might feel the pain in the people that are being exploited, or in animals, or in all of God's creation that's caused by oppression and exploitation. As we reach out to speak and act to address and heal that pain, and to seek justice and righteousness, we discover that God's already there in those places that, especially in those faces. In the people that we care for, we find God's face. And as our motives are clarified, you're blessed when you get your inside world, your heart and your mind set right. Then you can see God in the outside world. The light of Christ reveals God's presence, truth, and mercy at work, and shows us where and how we can be ambassadors of the love of Jesus. I'd like to share a story with you about a man named Alexander Papaderos and finding the meaning of life for himself. Now, Alexander was born on the island of Crete. And some of you who are up on your history might know that during the Second World War, Crete was under attack by the Nazis, was occupied, and his hometown, Levitas, was destroyed by the Nazis. And he, as a child, was interned in a concentration camp. After the war, he was determined to be a force for peace and forgiveness. He studied theology in the Orthodox Church, and in 1965, he opened an institute designed to promote peace and reconciliation. He located at Malines, the site where the German paratroopers landed, and one of the war's worst atrocities was unleashed. The paratroopers met resistance from islanders bearing nothing other than kitchen knives and hay scythes. The consequences of resistance were devastating. The residents of entire villages were lined up and shot. Now he has established this institute, and people from all over the world came there to study. And one day, while he was taking questions at the end of a lecture, one sort of smart aleck young man in there, but still really caring and wanting to know, spoke up and asked, "What's the meaning of life?" And there was nervous laughter in the room. It was such a big question, but Papaderos answered it. He opened his wallet, took out a small round mirror, and held it up for everyone to see. He explained that during the war, he was just a small boy from a very poor family when he came across a motorcycle wreck. The motorcycle had belonged to German soldiers, and Alexander saw pieces of broken mirrors from the motorcycle lying on the ground. He tried to put them together and patch it up, but he couldn't. And so he just took the biggest piece and scratched it against a stone until the edges were smooth and it was pretty much round. And he used it as a toy, fascinated by the way he could use it to shine light into holes and crevices. He kept that mirror with him as he grew up. And over time, it came to symbolize something very important, a metaphor for what he might do with his life. He said, I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into dark places of this world, even into the black places in the hearts of humans, and change some things for some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I'm about. This is the meaning of my life. Living into the Beatitudes keeps our light shining. We're not the light ourselves, but we reflect it as we best understand. And the symbol for our study today is a star. If you didn't print one out, just draw a large 5-point star and put your own name in the center. I like the pattern that Belinda found for us because it's kind of open between the center and those different points. The points around the star represent the points of contact you have in your immediate circle of influence. You might label those family, friends, congregation, community, world. You can doodle on them and add little descriptions if you think of something else you want to include. Make it your own. We're going to give you a chance to break out. And as you do that, you're going to name where you're zooming from and think about where your opportunities might be to share the light of God in the points of your life. Maybe just think of one spot where you try to bring a little bit of light. Welcome back from your groups. We're going to be breaking in groups again fairly soon. We're going to focus on the congregation point of your star, and in our breakout room, we were already there. But I want to just point out that all of these different points are connected. And as we find ways to bring glimmers of light in one place, know that there'll be places that it, as light will do, spills over into others too. I remember back in seminary days, I'm telling us about you get involved in one particular thing and focus it right where you've got the most time and energy and knowledge that you can really apply yourself there. And you're probably going to get demands from all other kinds of places too, but you can't do it all. So just focus on the one place that you can bring the most light and the most energy, and then just know that it's all connected. Most of us are involved in local congregations, and our congregations are extensions of the life of Christ at work in our time and place. We're called to be the body. And there are two aspects to that work that we do together that both are important. There's church work, necessary to keep the system running and building and holding a solid foundation. And ways that we're engaged in church work can be things like, the worship committee and the trustees and the staff parish committee and printing and folding bulletins and teaching Sunday school and vacation and Bible school. Before we got all together, before we actually started, people were talking about vacation and Bible schools. And actually, I almost put that one in this next category. But anyway, we're doing all kinds of things, visiting shut-ins and serving as liturgists and serving funeral lunches. And sometimes we just need to be there and worship and not try to take on special tasks, depending on our seasons of life. But there's all kinds of church work that we do to keep the church going. And as we do this church work, we get to know each other and we develop friendships, and we find Christ's love expressed in many ways. And as we look, we'll see God's face in others. And it might be somebody coming through the potluck line. I remember a person who would offer prayers before we'd start serving a church dinner and say, Jesus is coming through that line today, so be ready. Treat everybody as though it's Christ. And remember, that's what Jesus told us. You might see the face of Christ in the child who's asking those tough questions in Sunday school. You might see the face of Christ in the guy from pre-release kneeling next to the captain from the police department in communion, sharing bread with each other. Remember how those early Christians were defined by how they loved each other. We are given each other to practice on and learn to follow Jesus' commandment that we love one another as he loved us. And I'm sure it was difficult for some of Jesus' first followers. James and John were kind of in a debate about who's going to sit on which side of Jesus, So it cannot be difficult sometimes, but think about in your life within the church, where have you witnessed God at work in the people around you? Where might you have seen the face of Christ in somebody? So as we go into our breakout room now, we'll go back and dive into the life of your local church more in that point of your life. And think about where you might have seen God at work in the people that you're working with. Good. All right. Great.
We can stop the screen sharing.
Okay. As I was listening to the breakout group in my place too, we're already sharing so many ways that your congregations are really engaged in the community. And I just want to say a couple words that sometimes churches can get ingrown and be kind of like a well-oiled machine with everybody doing church work and caring for each other. But if it's only making enough oil to keep itself going, then it'll eventually run down. But if we're remembering that we're keeping this strong congregational this congregation together and building a foundation there, we're doing it so that. And one of the little phrases in the Bible that's caught my eye again and again is the word so that we can do the work of the church together. We were talking first about church work that we do to keep our congregation running, but then we do that so that we can do the work of the church in the community. And that's where we involve our congregations, listening first to try to understand what might be a need in the community that we could meet. And there's been a movement called Rethink Church, and we're going to go ahead and watch a quick video about that as we reach out into the world with love and care as a congregation.
When meals are served to hungry families, that's hopeful. When homes are rebuilt and lives restored, that's renewal. And when hearts are open to lift troubled spirits, that's community. Reaching out to neighbors to ensure basic needs are met, that's putting beliefs into action. That's church. Learn more at rethinkchurch.org. The people of the United Methodist Church.
Maybe your congregation is involved in all kinds of ways. And even like we were talking about Vacation Bible School, maybe there's neighborhood kids that are coming to that. You're having a class on parenting and other people are coming. Ways that you're connecting to the community. And I just invite you in the chat at this point, if you have something you'd like to share about a way that your congregation is reaching out into the community with that love of Christ, let's go ahead and stick that into the chat. And while we're doing that, I just want to share this passage. Paul talked about being the body of Christ in at least 3 of his letters, and maybe a couple of more, he alluded to it. It's such an important concept that he kept bringing it back again and again. And this little passage is from Romans. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it's serving, then serve. If it's teaching, then teach. If it's to encourage, then give encouragement. If it isn't giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. We got some thoughts in the chat of ways that your congregation is engaged in reaching out into the world. I'm not seeing my chat box right now,
Oh.
maybe because I've shrunk my thing a little bit. Kathryn, have you got some you could share with us?
I do. Let me fix one of my audios. I'll just shut this.
Unmute, Kathryn.
You're unmuted. And if you don't want to, I can do it.
We try to have a family event friendly that every month we advertise and try to get our neighbors of the church building to come to these free friendly events. The Safe Parking Initiative, a safe overnight place to park for those living in their vehicles, started a meal for our daycare families with a movie for the kids. We go to the laundry across the street from the church and assist in paying for laundry or just listening if the people want to talk. We bring food and share food as well. A number of the people in our discussion group had one little church, very small, has a really robust pantry program, which is kind of amazing. And there were some other, like my own community, there are many Venezuelans coming in, and there's a small community group that is feeding them every Friday and offering other kinds of forms of support in the way of luggage and those kinds of things. One of the other ones I see here is reaching out to the LGBTQ community and its members, a weekly food pantry. And that kind of is, we have a group that serves breakfast in the park to the unsheltered. And I think we're caught up.
All right, all kinds of ways that you're reaching out with that love of Christ.
Thank you for those.
Yes, thank you, thank you. We'll
Clothing
be
on a giving fence.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot, Kathryn.
It
Where's your
is.
church? What's your
Thank-
church, Kathy?
Thank
Another
God.
one is participating with other churches in a noon lunch brunch gathering for high school students with pizza and a devotional.
Oh my gosh.
What is your church, Kathryn? Oh, cannot hear
So
me.
we're going to
Oh,
keep moving ahead a little bit here. But thank you for all of those. And if you think of more you want to add, we'll be saving all of those and sharing them. We're going to share a kind of a little bizarre image of the body of Christ in this little cartoon thing. I live with my grandkids, some of them, and trying to connect with them, I sit down sometimes and watch TV together with some of these things that are just a little bit unusual. So, and yet sometimes you can find Christ at work in places that you would least expect it. And so Finn and Friends is a cartoon on Adventure Time, and it's been out there for quite a while. And sitting down with Jude and Sam, I watched this and was just engrossed as we watched it. So they go on all kinds of adventures together. And this is Finn is the guy, and his pup is Jake. And so they wind up going on an adventure down the street, and flip to the next one. They meet a magic man, and the magic man is going to give Finn a gift. And what the magic man does is turns Finn into a giant foot. And Finn, next picture, does not think much of being turned into a giant foot. What the heck kind of a gift is this? What can I do as a giant foot? And he rants and raves at the magic man, but he's left being a giant foot. He's just stuck in that giant foot. But he does discover in the next picture that he can stomp. One thing he can do is stomp. And he encounters a fire, and he discovers that he can stomp out the fires and save a bunch of children that are in these little homes. And so he does what he can do, by himself. And he manages to stomp out the fires, and then he's tired and he's dirty and he's burned his toes, and he decides he's going to go hide out underneath the bridge. Well, this place where he's been under the bridge now, next picture, is full of other people who have been cast into a spell, and they are a giant eye and an arm lying on the ground and other body parts that are just lying around and feeling totally useless because they can't do what they used to be able to do anymore. And then Finn has a dream, and when he wakes up, he comes up with an idea. He says, maybe we can figure out a way to stick together and do something if we can work together somehow. And so he figures out from his backpack that he's got enough rags and things he can tie together, and they all decide to go along with him, and he winds up getting tied together in the next picture. And the next picture will be what he winds up with. It's a little awkward, but it works. And what they do is they pin down the magic man and say, you got to turn us back into the people that we were before this. That's their first thing that they do together. And the magic man says, well, all right then, and turns them back into the people that they're supposed to be to start with. And as my grandchild pointed out, they're still kind of awkward people in the next picture. They are still who they were before, but they've learned that, as the next picture, that if they do find ways to work together, they can do things that they couldn't have done all by themselves. And so there's just another little image of becoming community and being the body of Christ. And even in this little place called Freak City, they figure out ways to work together. Now, as we work together, there's conflicts going to be emerging, and people have different opinions about worship services. What? We're going to have a drum set up by the altar? Or different ideas about serving the community. What? People staying here for family promise will run up our heat and water bills. So as we start working together, trying to do the work of Christ, we're going to run into conflicts and disagreements. But the way that we manage the disagreements with respect can be as important a ministry as anything we do in the community, especially in this time of division throughout our country. So one of the things that we need to do as we're working together to reach out with the love of Christ is to check our motives. As there's a quick slide on this too. As congregations and as individuals, if we're helping others, is it so we're going to get attention and feel good about ourselves, or is it going to be that we're just doing it with intention, with a sense of having listening and knowing what we're doing and what we're getting into, because we're meeting people where they need, in the place of need? And I can think of visiting a church one point in my life that had all kinds of services for folks in the community going all week long. And they had a big detailed schedule about what times the food bank was open and what time you could pick up clothing and when you could get toiletries and things like that, and tutoring. And they had all kinds of great ministries going. But on this big chart where they had everything listed, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, what time to come for those things, when it came to Sunday, it said closed. Think about it. What kind of a message was that sending? Do we really want to get to as human beings and relate to you, or are we just going to do our good deed things and then, pat ourselves on the back? We've got to check our motives. And this really came to me when I was it hit me in the head, sort of. God of the 2x4 got me with this one. When I was a student at ILIF, one of the assignments that we had in a church and social justice kind of classes was to take part in some kind of a demonstration. And I'd been reading in the Denver paper about this woman named Dorothy who'd opened a homeless shelter for women who were getting out of violence. And talk about, this was 1988, so it was quite a while ago, and there weren't very many shelters in those days, safe places where women could get out of bad situations with their children. And she was trying to get a home started there in Denver, kind of on the south side. And her name was Dorothy, so they called it Yellow Brick Road. And I was really impressed with what she was trying to do. And then I read in the paper how the Highlands Ranch, which those of you familiar with Denver know that this was pretty upscale neighborhood, was having a parade of homes of all these big, beautiful new mini mansions that had been built there. And it's a lovely neighborhood, and St. Andrews is there, and we were part of that community too. So I thought, well, maybe I could just do a sort of a little, bring attention to Dorothy's providing home for these women during the parade of homes. I could just get a little sandwich sign and sit out there and give information about that to all these wealthy people coming to look at the fancy homes. And I called Dorothy. And Dorothy said, well, that sounds like it would be kind of interesting thing to do, she said. But what we really need is somebody to type up grant applications for us. Are you any good with a typewriter? Could you just help us put our grants together? I didn't have to write them, just type them. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. The other one was kind of like me being the big old hero, coming in on the white horse, with my white cowboy hat or cowgirl hat, and getting a good grade for my class. And the other one was, listening and learning what was really needed and putting my heart into it and getting to know Dorothy and getting to know some of the people who were there and learning that the typing was going to help as much as anything. And they also appreciated the surplus zucchinis that I was pulling out of my beautiful garden. And man, I love gardening in the Denver area. After trying to garden on the Continental Divide here in Montana and harvesting green tomatoes in the snow, it was quite the thing to get tomatoes and zucchini out of my garden and have them fresh and be having enough to share with the folks at the Yellow Brick Road. And I'll just never forget that lesson in checking my own motives and thinking about how to be in ministry from the heart in relationship with the other folks. I can think of another situation where one of the churches that I served was providing space for a program for folks with children with developmental disabilities after school and during the summer times. And thinking we're providing space, but we don't know these children. We don't know the families. We don't know anything about them. And I talked to the director of the program, and she thought maybe if we did some kind of a lunch where people could get together, we would be able to get to know folks a little better. And because they were making cute little centerpieces for our tables and everything like that. They were trying to reach out to us a little, but we really were just kind of giving them space. And so we planned a little lunch, and it was so much fun. And quite a few folks from the church came to that and got to know the children and the parents. And the parents hadn't even had a chance to get to know each other because they'd just been bringing their children and dropping them off and going off to work. And so it was all of a sudden we had this opportunity to really engage and become community. And the light shone a whole lot brighter as we really got to know each other as individuals. And it's still glowing, I gotta say. I worshiped in that same church this morning. And that deeper sense of being in ministry and connected to the community, when we get rid of just trying to look good, but we're really engaging in a real way. Just makes all the difference in the world in the ministry we offer. It's almost time for our break. Is there anything more in
it
the...
is almost time, but we have actually a little bit of extra time, which is beautiful because we could invite the people here in the live session. Would anyone like to share an example of when you've had to maybe check your own motives, or you've known of another circumstance where you had a great idea to help someone, but it turned out that maybe the people you were going to help said, well, actually, this is this is more like what we need help here than what you're suggesting. Would anybody like to share? Sue's given us some great examples.
Well, I have a
Bonnie?
thought. I don't know how to
Bonnie?
find the hand on my computer. I can't raise it. So this happened to me twice this month. Now I live right across from Good Samaritan Hospital. And once I found a gentleman out there across the street. There's a bus stop. It doesn't run all the time. I looked up the times on there. It was going to pick somebody up 2 days later. And the hospital just let these people go. And you hear about it on the news. And you think, that's not really happening, is it? It's happening because there's only so much they can do. And it's no longer their concern. And we had to pick up pieces. These are people. They're left on the street, no extra clothes, no food, no water. Maybe they're just draped in a hospital gown with a little blankie around him. And it was cold one of these days. And he's just standing there waiting for the bus. I said to him, that's not coming for 2 more days. It's coming at 6 a.m. on Sunday. And here it is Friday. And I called my husband. This is near a neighborhood where I just walked the dog. I didn't have the dog with me at this time. I was purely free and available. Good thing. And then I said to my husband, we need to help this guy. And we just offered to give him a ride home. He says, I live in Aurora, which is 2 hours away. 4 miles, 20 minutes. I can't even speak. 20 minutes away. And we just said, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to get home. I don't know why nobody picked him up. I don't know any of these details. I don't care. The point is the guy's freezing and needs a place to get home. He could be an alcoholic or whatever. I don't care. All I know is that he had to get home. And all you do is you pick up your keys or your book or your whatever. You grab something to wear and you get in the car and you help somebody get somewhere. That's what he needed. And that's what we gave him. No questions asked. He offered, can I help in any way? I said, no, this is fine. We gave him our water bottles and socks and granola bars. But that's it, and we took him to his house. And sometimes you have to help these people on their level. Don't expect anything else to happen. And maybe they can't get to the food bank. Maybe that's not what they need. And we have to be, I'm thinking, talking to my church, this happened to me twice. I've seen people being just tossed out. And we need to set up some kind of another mission group of that sort of thing. Just think of all the things you all are doing already. You've got your food banks, you've got your clothing banks, you've got your this and your that with children. It's fantastic. And here's another unmet set of people that are just people and they have problems and they have a mom or a dad or a husband or somebody to help them. And I put myself in their place and I think, wow, how would I feel as a human being? And we need to plan these things too and help people out with transportation, whatever. That's an ask. It's a big ask. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but piece by piece, we had to start nipping away at the things that people genuinely really need. And give them help now, not a week from now, not a year from now, but now. Meet them where they are and take care of it. And pick up people off the street that are not your kind of people. They don't look like they're, they got a hospital band on their wrist, and that's all I know is they came out of the hospital. I live right across, and it's like, I'm starting to see these people more and more, and it's starting to bug me. This is a reality. So all over Denver is happening, and I heard about it on the news. I thought that couldn't be true. It is true, and there's only so much we can expect hospitals and police departments and fire engines to help. Where do we step in to pick up? We are also caretakers, just like they are. We have to help people at any given time and be
Bonnie,
ready.
that is beautiful. I mean, you absolutely were the hands and feet of Christ in that situation. And
Exactly. That's all you are. I was there at the right
yes.
time and place, and I'm there to help. So just do it.
May God always give us the eyes to see
yes,
what's really happening, right?
yes. And
That
it's
was
kind
a
of scary,
beautiful
but
example.
you
Thank
can't
you.
be scared. You have to be bold, and you have to be unafraid, and you have to just think, is this for me? What do I need? What would I do?
Sweet.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's absolutely beautiful. And that is what you shared is so rich in content. And I'm going to unpack that for the next week, I think. So thank you for
That's the
sharing.
reality, and that's what's scary. No one talks about it.
But we do what we can. We do
Right,
what we
we're doing what
can.
we
And it may be
can,
simple for
yes.
us, but it may be a huge thing in someone else's life. We want to hear from
Exactly.
Kay Rosenthal. Thank you, Bonnie.
I just wanted to share this book, Toxic Charity, because they talked a lot about how we think we're helping, but it's what we want to do, and it may not be what they need to have done. And it's a real eye-opener. It's by Robert Lupton, and our church did this in a book study, and it's really insightful. So I would encourage people to read that.
Can you put that title and author
I
in
just did.
chat? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
'Cause we're-
That's a wonderful recommendation.
Well,
Yep.
can you give any examples just off your head of where our motives were good, but it was not the real needs of the people? Just
Yeah, so now this may not be from the book, but it's the example of where you've decided to have some people come to an organization and you're going to paint and remodel their activity room. But what they wanted done was they didn't want that money. They didn't want your help. What they wanted to do was collect cans of food for their neighborhood to feed people. So you had people, you had money, and you had the idea. They wanted people, money, and their need met. So it's that mismatch. And they say a lot of that you'll see, especially churches thinking that they're going to come to a certain neighborhood or a certain town, even a different country, like when we go on our mission trips, that what we deliver doesn't match with what they really need. And so it's like her example of, what do you need? How can we help you? Instead of us coming with the answer, come with the question.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
a quote right there.
It's super powerful.
That's a great book. Thank
I
you
also
for the
have a thought
recommendation.
about that. As I went to a church once for Christmas, we'd give them the turkey, the huge turkey, and this and that. Their houses are this big. They don't have a place to put a huge turkey. They don't eat turkey. They're Hispanic. They celebrate Christmas differently than we do. And we just need to stop giving people what we do and
Right.
ask them, what do you want? What do you
Right.
eat? How do you do it? And then fill their needs, and not fill our needs, fill their needs.
Thank you.
So,
Peg Plimpton.
Yeah, I've got a little bit to add to underscore this, giving people what they can use and need. I work with the Homeless Housing Advocacy Network in Missoula, Montana. And before COVID, I had a homeless family whom we sent to the food bank. They were living in their car while we helped her work on other housing issues. She was given a box full of frozen hamburger and other things, raw potatoes, canned goods. She didn't have a can opener. She had no way of cooking. Now, because Han was involved, we were able to take these foods, cook, and get the food to her. But it was totally inappropriate. Then COVID hit and they had to stop giving food out for a while, which gave them a chance to think. Today, when you go into the food bank in Missoula, you get a shopping cart once they verified who you are and why you're there. And you choose the foods that you can use, that your folks need, that are not going to cause allergy reactions, etc. Food banks can learn.
Yes, and my church as well says they need can openers. They need sanitary products for women because that's not covered under the money they get for their food. That's not covered under what the state allows them a budget for. Ask them what people need and what they can use. Don't just give them a can. And we need to be thoughtful. They're starting to ask for stuff. What was it? They were asking for something else. I thought that's just really weird. We can get those easily, but no, they can't have those things. So let's please be aware of what people really actually need.
Exactly. I think I saw another hand up, but I don't remember who it was.
Oh, well, I have a hand up.
Please.
Barbara Bailey, Mestis Park. I just wanted to, kind of add on to what Kay was saying, but this thing about giving people what they need. And I know our Crossroads ministry has recently totally redone their food pantry, and it's now a market. And it's called a market, and you can go through. And just as the previous person said, you pick out what you need, what you can use as you go through. And it's so much better, and people like it. And it also provides some dignity for them, that they can go through and select the things that they need. And that is so important.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Barbara. Margaret Nestor, would you like to unmute, Margaret?
Thank you. So when I did a lot of outreach in my corporate life. And so when I work on a project with anybody in the church, if I don't know much about the nonprofit, I go and set up some time with the nonprofit and understand what they do and why they do what they do and what's important to them. So I'll give you an example. I was asked to participate in a project where we collected mittens and gloves and hats, and we had beautiful mittens and gloves and hats, and everything was homemade, and it was great. So I kind of made an assumption that all these discussions had already happened with this nonprofit because we'd been doing this project for many, many, many years. And so they asked me if I would deliver the things to the nonprofit, and I was really happy to do that because I wanted to learn more about this nonprofit. So I set up some time with the project director there. And so I said to her, I said, I've got all these things for you. Would you like them now? And I said, I want to know what you want. And she said, really, we can't have them now. I said, okay, when can you have them? We'll bring them then. So I made a note. And I said, the other thing I want to know is how does this fit in with your mission? And I said, I want to really know. I'm not going to be mad if it doesn't fit. I want to know how it fits with your mission. She said, it really doesn't fit with our mission. And I said, okay. I said, well, I have all these things. So she and I talked about that they were going to put them out for their people there, but it actually made more overhead for them doing this. But we also knew that there was another nonprofit very close that did this kind of thing. And so that those things, I said, if they're not used in a month, pass them on to this other nonprofit that it really fits better for. And so we agreed to that. So I went back and I told the people I was working with this, but you know what? They've continued to do the same thing because there was a lady in the church that did this forever. And so this is the right thing to do. And it's very frustrating because we're not really helping them. We're giving them more overhead. So it's just frustrating, but sometimes you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Margaret, that's a perfect segue into the conversations we're going to have after we come back from break.
So anyway, so I encourage everybody to listen, as everybody else has said.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you for this rich conversation. We are about to go to break, but what a wonderful exchange. Thank you, one and all.
Catholic Church. or not Catholic, but Orthodox church. You know, it's I learned so much from her, and also some of the problems and concerns that she's experienced in making her way in this country, and what it's like to go through that whole process, seeking asylum and going through hearings and all of the things that you have to do for that, for both of the young women. And we've got 3 more students from Ethiopia here at Carroll College now too. So it's kind of amazing how we've connected with another part of the world just from one thing leading to another. And it's just opened up worlds for a lot of us. There's another video we're going to watch. It's the story of Stone Soup, which some of you might be real familiar with. But there's different versions of it. And I really like this one as I looked at the different ones. As we think about how we pull people together to accomplish more together as community than we could as one of us alone.
There was once a comfortable little village nestled in the mountains. The people who lived there had more than enough to keep themselves content. One day, 2 travelers came along. Their coats were tattered, their hats were torn, their dusty shoes had holes in their soles. Hungry and tired, one traveler said to the other, "Surely someone here can spare a bit of food?" They knocked boldly on a door. It creaked open, and a woman asked, "What do you want?" "Please," said one of the travelers, "we are hungry. Do you care? Will you share? Do you have any food?" The woman squinted her eyes and tartly replied, "No." She quickly slammed the door shut. The travelers walked a little farther down the road and knocked on another door. A young boy answered. His chocolate brown eyes were sweet. "Good day," he said shyly. "What do you want?" "Please," said one of the travelers, "we are hungry. Do you care? Will you share? Do you have any food?" The boy replied, "There's no food here," and closed the door. The travelers wandered wearily through the village, knocking on every door, but everywhere they heard, "I don't care. I won't share. There's no food." They sat to rest beside a well. One traveler sighed and clutched his empty belly. He said, "If there is really no food in this elegant little village, then the people who live here are in greater need than we are. We should make them our magical soup." The 2 travelers climbed up on the edge of the well and shouted, "We are master cooks. If anyone in this town has a big black pot, we will make the most delicious soup anyone ever tasted." A door slowly opened. A round man emerged, carrying a gigantic black pot. "I love to eat," he said. "Here's a pot. Let me see what 2 master cooks can do with it." "Watch and see," said one traveler with glee. The travelers filled the pot with cold water and built a fire. Soon the flames licked the sides of the pot, and billows of steam rose into the air. Curious people began to gather. "What is happening?" the townspeople asked. "We are making an unusual soup," said one of the travelers. "It requires a special magical ingredient. I am certain we will find it in this town. All the eyes in the crowd watched as one of the travelers reached down and picked up an ordinary stone. He tossed it into the pot with a splash. "We're making stone soup," he said. "It will be nutritious, delicious, incredible, and edible, but it would taste better." He paused and sighed. "If we only had a carrot." "Where would we find a carrot in this town?" the other traveler asked. "We knocked on every door, and everywhere we heard, 'I don't care, I won't share, there is no food.'" "Then perhaps we cannot make the delicious soup after all," they both announced with a sad shrug of their shoulders, and began to turn away. A child timidly raised her hand and said, "Wait! I might have a small carrot." "Excellent!" shouted the travelers. "Bring what you've got. Put it in the pot. We're making stone soup. This magical soup would taste even better if we had a potato," they added. A deep voice in the back of the crowd called out, "I have a potato." "Wonderful!" shouted the travelers. "Bring what you've got. Put it in the pot. We're making stone soup." "It would taste better still," they said, "if we had just a few more ingredients." "Perhaps," said one villager, "I could bring a green bean." "Well," said another, "if you are going to bring a green bean, I will bring a kernel of corn." "I shall not be outdone," cried another. "I will bring an egg noodle." One by one, voices announced, "I will bring a slice of celery. I will bring a pinch of pepper. I can bring a sprig of parsley. I might have a tiny turnip." "Well, why are you waiting?" cried the travelers. "Bring what you've got. Put it in the pot. We're making stone soup." Everyone in the town ran home to bring one small thing to put in the pot. Food flew through the air and landed with splashes in the growing soup. Soon the huge pot was full and simmering. A wonderful smell drifted through the air. The smell was so tempting, people brought out bowls, spoons, chairs, and tables. They placed hearty loaves of bread, chunks of cheese, and bowls of fruit on the tablecloths. Everyone came to taste the soup and marveled at its flavor. "It's amazing," said one woman. "These two travelers made such a delicious soup out of a stone." "Out of a stone," said the travelers with a grin. "And a magical ingredient, sharing." As the travelers left the town, they said, "If anyone ever wants to make this soup again, just remember the recipe. Bring what you've got. Put it in the pot. Every bit counts, from the largest to the least. Together we can celebrate a stone soup feast."
Fun old story. And a new take on an old story. I imagine a lot of you have heard that story before. That patience and perseverance and persuasion. You start with what you got, put it in the pot. And I guess with that stone, you'd get some good elemental iron going in there too, probably. Maybe some other trace elements, you think? I don't know. I used to teach nutrition before I was a pastor, so we used to talk about the kids who had higher iron than because they were kind of closer to the ground and managed to ingest some of that. Anyway, I love the way that they put in people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and they kept inviting. There wasn't any blame or condemnation of anybody. They just decided they'd worked together themselves with what they had, and they created something better than any one of them could have made on their own.
Pastor Sue, Ruth Trowbridge has her hand up.
All right, Ruth.
Yes, would you? I hope you don't mind if I share that I'm a lifetime Girl Scout, and we always made stone soup at camp. And to make it, as brief as I possibly can. Of course, we started with an iron pot and with the stone, and then certain girls had been in advance told what they were supposed to bring, and they brought from home a carrot or a potato or an onion or something they brought from home, and they had it in their backpacks hidden where nobody saw it. And of course, then you understand that they each came and brought the thing that they brought from home and put it in the stone soup, and that it ended up being our lunch that day at camp. And so that was just lots of fun. So I just wanted to share that was my experience year after year at Girl Scout camp. So
that's wonderful, Ruth. That's great to really have that hands-on, tasteful experience.
Of course, it went on, quite a while, about a half hour of doing all.
Sure. Take a while to cook it all up. Yeah.
And they all had little speeches that they gave about what they brought and everything. So
yeah, would turn out. That's a great story. And of course, the secret ingredient is sharing.
Right.
Yep. And just opening up your heart to share what you've got, even if it seems like a little bit to put in the pot. It makes a difference. And it can be real savory too. That's great. We started to talk a little bit about, well, let's see, Belinda, I think we were going to have you share your ministry project at this point. I know you talked about it a little bit in the small group, but if you'd like to go ahead and share some more about that now, and as people have shared in the church that you've been part of has been reaching out with that love of Christ in the community.
Did you want to talk? Are we talking about conflict in the church and Marcia Prather's conversation? Is that where we are?
I guess we could go ahead with that. Yeah, I think because we do, as we were talking in our small group too, can start running into some conflict sometimes when we're trying to do things together. And so just to being real about it, finding ways to address those when they come up. So we're not just trying to put a Band-Aid on it or brush it under the rug or belittle people in any way. Belinda had a good experience with a mutual friend of ours that really demonstrated it in a church meeting.
Well, when you were talking about the work of the church, first you have to be a church to do the main, we have to be a church that requires certain things be done, right? And so there is the church work, but then we're able to then be the hands and feet of Christ and do the work of church in our community, in our world. But I remember one time being in a meeting after church with Marcia Prather. Some of you may know her from Stevensville, Montana. She's now relocated and retired to Santa Fe. So she's in Santa Fe having a great life, next life chapter. But I remember being in Stevensville, Montana, Western Montana. It was after church on a Sunday in a church meeting, big round table. And when Marcia spoke, people listened. She was like E.F. Hutton. When she spoke, people listened. She was a retired emergency room doctor. So she had years of experience with triaging medical conditions. People would come through the doors of the ER and she would just quickly assess and triage what's going on, what's needed, next patient. Well, she had a way of cutting through a lot of stuff and just get to the point. She had an amazing way about her, Marcia does. And at this meeting around the round table, Marcia no apologies necessary. She's liberal in her stance, but she knew and loved people in her church family. And she knew that some of them were not of the same persuasion as her. We were at this meeting, and directly across from her was a gentleman, an older gentleman, who was, if you will, polar opposites to her, the way she sees the world. And I'll never forget this lesson that I was learning around the table. there was some topic of conversation, and I was thinking, ooh, this could get a little tense. And someone said something, this gentleman across from her, and she leaned in and called him by his first name and said, I don't agree with anything you just said, but I'm curious about why you think this way. Tell me more. And it was a fascinating exchange because she called him by name. She identified, if you will, we have a relationship. I know your name. And she said up front, I don't agree with anything you just said. but then she said, but I'm curious. How do you come to seeing, how have in your life have you been impacted? How is it that you come to this place in your life where you see things this way? I'm curious. Tell me more. I'm listening. It was respectful. It was not saying, well, I disagree with you and you're just full of it. Or, it wasn't shutting the door, slamming the door. It was opening a door for, we have a relationship. Let's build on this relationship. I want to know how you've come to believe this. I want to engage with you. I want to be respectful. I want to listen. You know where I stand. I want to listen to where you stand and why. And it was a fascinating way to model. She modeled for me how to deal with someone who doesn't see the world the way I do.
Thank you for sharing that story, because I know Marcia too. I've stayed with her, and just honest, respectful differences there, and how you address those. Cheryl is going to read for us some words from the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus was suggesting to his disciples how to address differences and conflicts.
Thank you, Sue. We're reading Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, and this is from the Common English Bible. Sinning brother or sister. If your brother or sister sins against you, go and correct them when you are alone together. If they listen to you, then you've won over your brother or sister. But if they won't listen, take with you one or two others, so that every word may be established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. But if they still won't pay attention, report it to the church. If they won't pay attention even to the church, treat them as you would a Gentile and tax collector.
And then he goes on to talk with Peter about how many times do you forgive somebody? And something like 70 times 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, sinning, we kind of tend to put a big heavy weight on that. But sin really means that you miss the mark, or maybe you've hurt somebody, maybe intentionally or maybe unintentionally. You just neglected to follow through on something and it hurt somebody else. There's all kinds of different ways we can hurt each other or feel hurt. And I know I've done my share of that. But the idea of just addressing that person individually and maybe expressing your own in a place where you can talk privately, and express your own concerns or how you felt. A lot of us are familiar with the idea of sending iMessages saying, when this happened, it made me feel discounted or made me feel ignored, or like it made me feel like my thoughts don't matter. So you're expressing your own feelings, and then most of the time, most of the folks, 90% of the time, I bet, had no intention of hurting your feelings or of hurting your relationship. And if you can approach it humbly and then with a forgiving spirit, you've won a brother or sister back over. Your relationship deepens, actually, because you understand each other better.
Now we're ready for Breakout Room Session 3.
Okay, well,
I put the question in the chat.
all righty, all right. Before we do that, just a couple more thoughts. Just being sure that we try to understand each other's motives and things like that, giving them a chance to respond and reflect. So when in the breakout rooms, we're just going to be talking a little bit about how you might address conflict sometimes in your local situations. So share some ways that you've tried or ideas that you've had from other people that might work. I'm going to be sharing some more of the things that I had thought about trying to share next time, because it all kind of fits together as we build towards being peacemakers. And one of the things, especially as we look at the bigger picture and the conflicts that are going on beyond our local church, is that there are some groups out there working in our country to try to build better understanding between the different polarized groups that we have going on, looking for some common ground and ways to work together. I was listening to NPR just yesterday, I guess it was, and there was a group of people trying to be peacemakers and how can we help folks understand each other and talk to each other across these gaps that we have right now. And it's kind of countering, there's a lot of different groups that are rising up that are kind of trying to counter the toxic sort of politics of that we've had going on lately, and saying that who are we really? One of the groups that I've appreciated, I read about them first in the Christian Science Monitor, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And then when I retired, I started to follow them a little bit closer and have been a little connected, at least, is a group called Braver Angels. And I've been really impressed with what they've been trying to do. And so I've grabbed a little video about their work, and we'll show that as just an option of ways to, beyond this time that we're sharing together, if you're really concerned about the larger community and how we can be engaged, I'd recommend them as one of several, but that's especially good, I think. So let's share the little bit of a video about Braver Angels.
Politics has always been a passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as enemies. This level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see, could we get together a group of folks who'd voted for Trump and a group of folks who'd voted for Clinton and get them in a room together to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about one another.
When you're there in person and you have to face the person you're talking to, we remember suddenly the rules of civil discourse and kind of how we should act in society. It's something that really distinguishes this form of conversation and debate.
It's all well and good to talk about civility and being nice to people, but the missing ingredient is courage.
The courage that it takes to have a difficult conversation, to put yourself out there.
What we've been saying is that this year, it's not enough to call in our better angels. We have to call in our braver angels.
The name Braver Angels captures the evolving spirit of better angels. We have to be willing to summon the courage to see the best in the other side, see the best in our fellow Americans.
Courage means becoming a leader in your own community who's standing up for America, not just for your political party or your tribe or folks with whom you share an identity, but standing up for something larger that we can all believe in. If we can create a large enough movement that is clamoring for a more courageous style of politics, we can change the incentives.
That's something that can only be achieved through what we call patriotic empathy, this idea that your love for your country is demonstrated in your love for your fellow American. As braver angels, we're able to lean into that with courage and boldness.
It will make you feel like we can serve this place and our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement, this is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
Go to braverangels.org. Sign up to join our email list. And at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
So check them out. And maybe some of you have recommendations of other groups too. So keep those in mind and bring them back next Sunday when we get together. Just want to say just a few quick things that we will pick up on this conversation some more and have more chances to practice some of those kinds of questions that Karen was teaching us and ways of interacting. And next week, we're going to have the mayor of Helena come and be our guest presenter. His name is Wilmot Collins, and he was a refugee from Liberia. And he and his wife made their home here in Helena, and both have worked for a long time with the National Guard. She's a nurse practitioner, and he's been doing all kinds of good things in the community too, but putting his faith into action into this larger picture and countering this whole politics of outrage and all of the stuff that we've been encountering with common sense and dignity. So I really appreciate the chance to introduce Wilmot to you next week. I think that's probably it from what you need from me today. Well, except, yeah. Where are we with time? Brenda? Belinda?
We will be having communion at the end of the fourth session this coming Sunday. So please have your communion elements available. The Reverend Janet Hernandez will be with us to celebrate Holy Communion.
So we're glad that you're sticking with us through this Mission U session, and I hope that it's something that keeps being of value to you. And we're going to close with a reflection written by the Reverend Steve Garnaas-Holmes, who served churches here in Montana for quite a few years and wound up in the New England Conference and retired in Maine. But he keeps putting out a regular daily reflection that is just a real gift to the soul. Grace and peace to you. Follow me, says Jesus. Sometimes the call is to stay, not to head off on some new adventure, but to work through where you're at, to make peace, to mend a relationship, to endure a struggle, to fulfill faithfulness. Sometimes Jesus needs you most crucially right where you are, to be his vessel in exactly what you're doing with new love, to accompany him where you always go, to do the same old things with new light, to bear grace even at home. May the steady one be with you, sustain you in your work, companion you in your challenges, and grant you strength, wisdom, perseverance, love, beauty, and courage. If you are in Christ, then where you are is holy ground. God bless you deeply and increase your delight. May you remember these words of Christ. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. May you indeed find peace in this anxious world, and may God bless you and keep you safe until we meet again.
Thank you, Sue. We are so pleased to have you with us during this study. You are a balm to our souls, I believe. And now we have just a few announcements. Know that all of these announcements are included in your weekly email. We just keep adding on, and I know it gets a little long, but at least at the end of the session, you can print it out and you will have all the announcements for the entire time that we have been together. First up is the Greening of Your Church. It's a webinar on Sunday, March 3rd. You can register for it online. The link will be either, it was in your past email if you want to get a link there, or it will be in the one coming up. So know that that link is available, and it's by our own Creation Justice Task Force in the Mountain Sky. And then there is this Women's Soul Care Retreat, April 5th through 7th in 2024, the Fairmont Hot Springs Resort in Montana. It sounds like a delightful, I've heard a lot about it, and I hope that many of you are able to be able to make the time to do that, because I know it's going to be a blessing for all of those who attend. It sounds just like a beautiful, beautiful setting, for one thing. And then we also have coming up the next slide, which is our hybrid mission study, which is going to be at Ogden First United Methodist Church, Marriott, Slaterville City, Utah, which is a place I'm looking forward to visiting, as I've never been there. And so our study will be led by Denise Logan and by Sandy, and we will be reviewing a lot of the material we did last time, but it's going to probably also be different because we're live, and that's very exciting. So again, I hope many of you are able to make that event. And then finally, we have one last announcement. Or maybe that was it. And so I will introduce the final song. We have the breakfast. I think the lag in our computers is just enough that I'm seemingly either ahead or behind. I'm not sure which. But Saturday, June 22nd, as part of our annual conference up in Casper, Wyoming. So again, save that date. The United Women in Faith annual meeting will be at St. Andrews United Methodist Church in Highlands Ranch. That's exciting. We now have dates, the 11th and 12th, and the location. And so again, mark your calendar. We're at St. Andrews United Methodist Church on October 11th and 12th for our annual meeting. Last week, it's hard to believe it'll be our final week next week. And Sue, I know, is got a very good final session for us. And with our special guest, that will be really exciting to take part. I got to hear him at the annual conference in Helena 2 years ago, and he's quite a dynamic speaker and has such a relevant story to tell. You can still register for this study if you have folks who have heard about it and want to do it. They can also catch up by using the recordings on our YouTube channel. And I will also remind you that you can also ask for CEUs, and all you have to do is email me. And I would put it in the chat box, but my chat box is frozen, but it's in the email as well. And we keep reminding you of that fact in the email. So kind of everything you need to know is in the wonderful email that Laura sends out each and every week. So be looking for that again next week. And that brings us to our introduction of our final music. It has been a blessing to be with you today. And so please enjoy this music. And once we have the music, we will be dismissed. Make me a channel of your peace.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, through faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving to all men that we receive.